Adonai sifatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehillatcha. Most High, open my mouth that I may speak your praise. Open my mind, open my heart, open my life-giving center, so that I may stand humbly before you and with this beautiful community, translating words of Torah into actions that can serve. Good evening, everyone. My name is Yavilah McCoy, and I am a woman who speaks at the crossroads. In Exodus, when God presented himself to Moses at the burning bush, he compelled a man who had been brought up in the privilege of Pharaoh's household to return to Egypt and to redeem a people called Israel that was suffering from the cruelty of oppression and slavery. How will they know that I am your messenger? He asked God. How will they know that you are a God that is a redeemer? God answered Moses, tell them that I am as I am. Tell them, as Ramban teaches, that the people will come to know me through our unfolding experiences together. Tell them that I am a living and complex reality that can be experienced, but not defined or limited by language. Share the reality of my existence in language that allows for the greatest range of possible meaning. This is the Torah of Intersectionality. This Torah is embedded in our earliest stories of our people's liberation. In the intersectional story of my own liberation, I am bodegas. I am the West Indian Day Parade. I am dance hall blaring. I am Hasidim walking. I am Eastern Parkway. And I am a call to prayer. I am black-eyed peas and rice. And I am matzo ball soup. And I am coming from, girl, you looking like who shot John and what for? And I am also ki leolam chasto, for God's mercy endures forever. I am the stone that the builder refused. I am wonder at the beauty of humanity. I am seeing the full dismantling of racism and white supremacy in my lifetime. I am understanding that people don't often say what they really mean. I am believing that there, but for the grace of God, go I. I am questioning, oh, no, you didn't. I am learning. I am music. I am imagination. I am hope. I am a daffodil. I am dreaming in Technicolor about revolutionary change. I am living my best life, and I am working to have my best life live on after me. I am bodegas. I am the West Indian Day Parade. I am dance hall blaring. I am Hasidim walking. I am a call to prayer. I am a Black Jewish woman. In my professional life, I am the CEO of Dimensions Educational Consulting. This is in Boston. And by design, Dimensions is a women and people of color, Jews of color, led consultancy that provides diversity, equity, and inclusion resources. Our work is simply to aid all of our partners in recovering our humanity in deeper relationship. I'm a mom, I'm an activist, I'm a global citizen. I am unapologetically committed to the Torah and spiritual practice of growing equity and justice in our world. Those who have met me might also tell you that I am unapologetically Black, that I am unapologetically Jewish, and that I am unapologetically woman in the ways that I walk through the world. What all this means to my activism is that I take seriously what Angela Davis taught us, that it is not our highest calling as Jewish social justice activists to accept the things that we cannot change, but to consistently dedicate our lives and our energy to changing the things that we cannot accept. I am here. I am here with you this evening to talk about intersectionality and the ways that I and you too might practice Torah at the intersection of our common need for justice. Intersectionality, as defined by its originator, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, is the understanding that multiple forms of oppression will often intersect, happen at once within one person or one group's identity. Intersectionality is a frame. It helps us to hold that historic systems of inclusion, exclusion within society, such as racism, sexism, classism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, belief-based bigotry, are often acting in concert and in relationship to one another as they contribute to an individual's or a community's experience of inequality. As Jews, this means that each of us are likely to experience inclusion or exclusion, equality or inequality, across a spectrum of our identities in one person. These identities denote for us inness and outness, one-upness and one-downness in Jewish and broader spaces. Many of us are simultaneously navigating being women, queer and trans folk, poor or working class, non-white, non-Ashkenazi, not from large coastal communities, and many other marginalized identities, while also being Jewish. This intersection has impact on our ability to experience equity in Jewish space. When there is only a single narrative or aspect of our identity being seen or served, there is a need for intersectionality. Intersectionality is a concept and practice that holds us accountable. In our earnest and good intentions, to not leaving those who are most targeted, made most vulnerable among us, off the table, behind entirely sometimes, as we seek to grow just communities that can actually hold all of us. In my work as an equity consultant, intersectionality has meant working with willing partners to simply hold multiple identities in relationship as we create communities with doors that are actually wide enough for those who have been marginalized to walk through with a sense of grace, with a sense of power. Intersectionality has meant working with partners to make that which is invisible visible, and to celebrate all the reasons that we already have to explore the fullness of where we come from. where we come from as Jews, where we come from as Black people, where we come from as women. In my most essential practice of intersectionality, I'm facilitating our capacity as communities to work across the spectrum of our humanity, to build a better future by holding multiple truths as worthy of being witnessed, worthy of being valued, capable of being held with love. Intersectionality is the practice, for me, where the work of deepening our capacity to stand in solidarity matters across various identities, where we work to be more powerful in reaching for a broader set of equitable possibilities. Now, as a young girl, I learned intersectionality through the phrase, da lifnei mi ata omed. When I was a young girl, I attended a Hasidic yeshiva in Brooklyn, and I was one of 2 Jewish girls in that school of 600 students, me and my sister. Each day that year, there was roll call. The teacher would begin, Miriam, Shandy, Zeldy, Yavilah. And each of us were meant to answer her, Hineni, here I am. Each morning, my classmates and I would stand in reflection before a huge banner and sign that said in Hebrew, Da lifnei mi ata omed. Know before whom you stand. My teacher taught us on the first day of classes that this passage was meant to help us to get still. That this passage from Sayings of the Fathers, Talmud Brachot, is also in synagogues. It's often splayed across the ark. But it was meant to cause us to imagine ourselves actually standing before God, like Moses at the burning bush. She wanted us to feel this way before initiating our prayer. It was supposed to still us, stop our chatter, inspire us toward contemplation of something bigger than ourselves. For me, that time in the morning was for reflecting upon a deeper truth and possibility. A truth that my Jewish education was making viscerally aware to me. The truth of what it meant for me, a young Black child, to be integrating a majority white environment. Those quiet moments often found me contemplating the experience of being that child, of being that Black girl in a sea of whiteness that was invisible to those who held it. The truth was that it was only my and my family's commitment to living our lives as Jews that had brought me into relationship with these girls and into this challenging institutional context. You see, my parents had placed me in an all-white Jewish parochial school, not because they were naive, or not because they were unaware of the implications, but because they were curious about the possibilities. A possibility that I was curious about at 10 as well. Could it be that our racial differences, held in relationship with our common commitment to practice Torah, yield an agreement to stand before God, not just as a prelude to prayer, but in our behavior with each other each day? Might the practice of living and respecting and teaching the values of our ancestors mitigate the practice of racism that I endured in my teachers and classmates daily? standing at this intersection of race and faith at this tender age, taught me how to live in this realm of possibility. The possibility that one day my people might practice our religion, practice its mandate, and realize that I too am God, sheltered in a Black body. That we all stand before the spark of the divine in each other with every encounter. It was reflecting upon and continuing to imagine the possibilities regarding the intersection of race and faith that gave me hope, that strengthened me, even as a young girl. Now, given my early orientation toward activism, some of you might be surprised to hear that I didn't grow up fed by my mothers on words like intersectionality or patriarchy or sexism. As Janet Mock so eloquently teaches in her book, Redefining Realness, my mothers were an exhibition in resilience, in resourcefulness, in Black womanhood, in real time. They were so busy living intersectionality, so busy striving for equality, right? Navigating oppression and surviving its impacts, that there was really little time for sitting and contemplating academic terms. And yet, they knew what these words meant. When my grandmother became the first Black woman to work in the anesthesiology department of Brooklyn Hospital, she knew and stood in resistance to sexism. When during the Great Migration, my great-grandmother, who graduated at the top of her class, traveled from North Carolina to New York, looking for work to support her family and bring her 4 siblings one by one from the Jim Crow South. She knew some of the reasons why she could not find work were because of pervasive racism and sexism intersecting in hiring practice. She resisted, and she taught me to resist too by dressing up like a man and taking a job on the docks. She swung from rafters in a cap and in a man's uniform, painting ships so that she could support her family. This with no academic words to describe her experience. But with her body, she said every day, "Ain't I a woman?" Patricia Hill Collins teaches that oppressed groups are often frequently placed in the situation of being listened to only if we frame our ideas in language that is familiar to and comfortable for dominant groups. And that this requirement often changes the meaning of our ideas and works to elevate the ideas of the dominant groups as opposed to our own narratives as Black women. As a career Jewish professional, I've encountered the insidious expectations of both racism and sexism. That a woman is to be seen but not heard. That she must choose her words carefully, lest she be considered angry and lose men's partnership. That the cost of access to leadership is assent, agreement, and that calling in our community to the need for social change in all ways that we function must be accomplished in ways that keep us comfortable. I've learned in Jewish practice that the comfort of calling in is entirely preferred to the comfort of calling out our community on the racism, on the sexism, and on the associated violence that we are consciously and unconsciously acting out and enduring with each other each day. As I speak tonight about intersectionality, I stand before you speaking the narrative of a Black Jewish woman for whom comfort is a practice of the privileged. As we approach the holiday of Purim in just a few days, I don't forget the words of Mordechai to Esther at the hour of our people's despair. Ki im hacharesh tacharishi, umi yodea im la'et hazot higa'at lemalchut. For if you remain silent, Esther, at this time, relief and deliverance will come from another place, and you and your house will perish. As a woman whose liberation is indelibly connected to allowing my identities to flow inward and outward and across my living, flavoring my understanding of what Torah, truth, and justice means in a world that's crying out for change, I have yet to feel the liberty of not speaking truth to power, of not speaking Torah to power for the sake of our people's survival. And I do this with love, and I do this without apology. Intersectionality has me asking in these times, whose America is this? And whose will it be under our leadership? Paul Robeson taught in 1952, the faces and the tactics of leaders may change every 4 years, but the people go on forever. The people beaten down today, yet rising up tomorrow, losing the road 1 minute, but finding it the next. Their eyes always fixed on a North Star of true justice, equality, and dignity for all people. These are the real guardians of our hopes and dreams in this country. With Jewish institutions, what are our hopes and dreams for our people, for this country? We have become well attuned, right, to the work of social justice, meaning service. Our practice has involved broad efforts to help those in need, both within and beyond our gates. Intersectionality has me asking, how might we elevate our efforts to save those poor, unfortunate souls by endeavoring to masterfully save our own souls from becoming complicit with the practices of oppression? In these times, when we face Charlottesville and shouts of blood and soil, and Jews will not replace us, a new and eerily familiar American reality emerges. How does this current moment call us into a new understanding of what Jewish leadership must mean? In 2018, I stand before you clear and awake to the fact that racism and white supremacy is a disease that is killing our nation. Alongside my desire to be free, to define and shape my thinking and my reality as a Black Jewish woman, I have no choice but to consider the ways that unarmed Black and brown people, Black and brown women, are being shot dead in their homes and in the streets in extrajudicial killings by armed policemen and vigilantes. I have to consider, what does it mean to be free when people of color make up only 30% of the US population and yet account for 60% of those who are imprisoned? Creating conditions today where more Black people are incarcerated than the total population of those that were enslaved prior to emancipation. Alongside the personal privilege that I and my husband experience of being able to send our daughter to Princeton to receive one of the highest ranked educational experiences in our country, we are also awake to the challenges and the struggles that she continues to face there around the intersection of racism and anti-Semitism among the academically elite. When I hold intersectionality as a lens for understanding my citizenship in this country, I am brought into relationship with the fact that our current administration, in concert with multiple state governments, are currently engaged in the promulgation of legislative attacks. Legislative attacks on the rights and freedoms of the most vulnerable among us, in education, in voting rights, in immigration, in the rights of Muslims, in the rights of Sikhs, in transgender people, and many other marginalized citizen communities in our country. These communities are my communities. And intersectionality, in the name of equity and justice, has me awake at night. I consider the violence being wrought upon our communities by state-sanctioned raids that are leaving children and families torn apart, disconnected, disenfranchised. Intersectionality has me crying. It has me crying for the number of children in our nation that have died and will continue to die in the absence of common sense gun laws. These children are our children. And intersectionality, in the name of dismantling systems of oppression, amplifies the sound of the many and multiplied hearts that are crying out for healing, crying out for repair, crying out for resolution in our country. In my intersectional lens, you find me tonight truthful, and it's also finding me curious, hopeful as to what our Jewish leadership is going to mean as we hold that lens. When I hold the intersectionality of my being a Black Jewish woman and a teacher and a spiritual leader and an activist, I hear a call to action in the stunning words of our sister Emma Lazarus. "Give me your tired," she said. "Give me your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Until we are all free, we are none of us free," said this Jewish woman. I hear a call to action in the words of Harriet Tubman, a Black woman born into the travesty of our enforced slavery in this country in the 1800s. She rises strong before us to say, "I freed 1,000 slaves, and I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew that they were slaves." I had reasoned it out in my mind that there was one of two things I had a right to have: liberty or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other. I hear a call to action in the words of Sojourner Truth, who spoke at a majority white women's convention in Akron, Ohio in 1851. She said, "Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and I have planted, and I've gathered into bonds. No man could head me. Ain't I a woman? I've borne 13 children and seen most of them sold into slavery. And when I cried out with a mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. Ain't I a woman?" As I look to my people and my people and my people and my people, with the hope of developing a community of faith allies that might work together to create greater equity and justice. I realize that our Jewish experiences around having been targeted for prejudice and targeted for violence over 5,000 years has brought us into a place of trauma in our social justice relationships. This is relevant. The ways in which we and our parents and our grandparents experienced wounds to our human dignity as a result of the oppression remain with us, and they don't go away simply because we wish them to. Donna Hicks and Bishop Desmond Tutu are working together on something called the Dignity Project. And as they teach, as a part of their work to end conflict across the globe, they say that indignities are experienced in a part of the brain that registers pain, and that the memory of pain is so powerful that not only does it continue to register physically even after the wound is healed, but that it can also be passed down across generations and still be felt viscerally. They're teaching that the most human response to this pain is either to freeze, fight, or flight. In the context of our finding healing to transgenerationally held traumas and suffered indignities, it is this survival impulse that makes the process of forming just relationships beyond rehearsing our suffering challenging. In order to heal and transform not just our Jewish community, but our relationships toward equity and justice across the world, we need intersectional relationships. Relationships where we can acknowledge both our own and others' historically held pain. We need relationships where we restore dignity by offering truth, reconciliation, and the prospect of healing. In the transactions we make every day around inequity, what is often being negotiated is the difference between life and death. Education, healthcare, fair wages, mass incarceration, immigration, sexual violence, gun violence, all are today's issues where we say with our policies and practice that either people's lives matter or that they don't. In our caring and in our indifference to these matters, in our proximity to them, or in our distancing ourselves from them, our Jewish souls are at stake. Each of us here can practice intersectionality every time we agree to stand together and name that this intersectional moment that we are in matters. Every time we agree to stand across our differences as both individuals and as communities, to shift policies, to change laws, to repair systems, to eliminate practices that would keep all of us from working together toward a better future. Each of us have a chance to do that when we're willing to see a world that is full of more than just our own experiences. My name is Yavilah McCoy, and I am a woman who speaks at the crossroads. Thank you for your attention to Speaking Torah to Power this evening. I am with you.